Welcome to the video lecture for Module 1.2.5. So we've talked about many of the major organs and tissues that have endocrine functions, but there's a lot of tissues and organs that have secondary endocrine functions. And that's what we kind of want to talk about, some of the endocrine tissues of other systems that have some effect on the endocrine system. As always, here are the learning objectives for this one. So you kind of have an overall or overarching learning objective here, which is to state the hormones that are produced by the intestines, kidneys, thymus, adipose tissue, heart, testes, the ovaries. And we're going to talk in greater detail about a lot of these as we get into the units that cover these specific organs and tissues. But we do want to highlight because they do have endocrine functions, at least here in this chapter. So, as we noted earlier, many organs of the body systems have secondary endocrine functions. Examples are the intestines, or the digestive system, the kidneys, which are part of the urinary system, the heart, which is part of the cardiovascular system, the thymus, which is part of the lymphatic system, and the gonads, which are the testes in males, and the ovaries in females, which are part of the reproductive system. You can see a lot of those here. Several new hormones from these endocrine tissues have been identified recently. In many cases, their structure and modes of action remain relatively uncertain, and we have not yet described them in a lot of detail. However, in one instance, researchers traced a significant new hormone to an unexpected site of origin, which led to the realization that the body's adipose tissue has more important endocrine functions than we had previously believed. I included the endocrine functions of the adipose tissues in this section, although the details have really yet to be worked out in some of the science. I still wanted you to be aware of it. And table 18-6 that you see here provides, again, an overview of some of these hormones and those tissues of other systems that are produced. So we're going to run through a bunch of them. The intestines process and absorb nutrients. They release a variety of hormones that coordinate the activities of the digestive system. Most digestive processes are hormonally controlled locally, although the autonomic nervous system can affect the pace of these digestive activities. So the kidneys release the steroid hormone calcitriol, the peptide hormone erythropoietin, and the enzyme renin. Calcitriol is important for calcium ion homeostasis. Erythropoietin and renin are involved in the regulation of blood volume and of blood pressure. Calcitriol is a steroid hormone secreted by the kidneys in response to parathyroid hormone, or PTH. Cholecalciferol, or vitamin D3, is a related steroid that's synthesized in the skin or absorbed from the diet. Cholecalciferol is converted to calcitriol, although not directly. The term vitamin D applies to the entire group of related steroids, including calcitriol, cholecalciferol, and various intermediate products. The best known function of calcitriol is to stimulate calcium and phosphate ion absorption along the digestive tract. The effects of PTH on calcium absorption result primarily from stimulation of calcitriol release. Calcitriol's other effects on calcium metabolism include 1. Stimulating the formation and differentiation of osteogenic cells and osteoclasts, 2. Stimulating bone reabsorption by osteoclasts, 3. Stimulating calcium reabsorption by the kidneys, and 4. Suppressing PTH production. Evidence also indicates that calcitriol also affects lymphocytes and keratinocytes in the skin, but these effects have nothing to do with regulating calcium levels. Erythropoietin, or EPO, is a peptide hormone released by the kidneys in response to low oxygen levels in kidney tissues. EPO stimulates the red bone marrow to produce more red blood cells. The increase in the number of red blood cells elevates blood volume. Because these cells transport oxygen, this increase also improves oxygen delivery to the peripheral tissues. Specialized kidney cells, called juxtaglomerular cells, release renin in response to 1. Sympathetic stimulation, or 2. A decline in renal blood flow. Once in the bloodstream, renin functions as an enzyme that starts an enzymatic cascade known as the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, or RAS, RAAS. RAS is involved with blood pressure regulation and electrolyte metabolism. First, renin converts angiotensinogen, a plasma protein produced by the liver, to angiotensin 1. In the capillaries of the lung, angiotensin-converting enzyme, or ACE, modifies angiotensin 1 to the hormone angiotensin 2. This hormone, in turn, stimulates secretion of aldosterone by the adrenal cortex and ADH by the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. The combination of aldosterone and ADH retains salt and water by restricting their loss by the kidneys. Angiotensin II also stimulates thirst and elevates blood pressure. For these reasons, drugs known as ACE inhibitors are used to treat hypertension. Because renin plays such a key role in the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, many physiological and endocrinological references consider renin to be a hormone. We'll take a closer look at the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system when we examine control of blood pressure and blood volume later on in the cardiovascular units. The endocrine cells in the heart are cardiac muscle cells in the walls of the atria, which are the chambers that receive blood from the veins, and the ventricles, which are the chambers that pump blood to the rest of the body. If blood volume becomes too great, these cells are stretched excessively, to the point at which they begin to secrete natriuretic peptides. In general, the effects of natriuretic peptides oppose those of angiotensin II. The natriuretic peptides promote the loss of sodium and water by the kidneys and inhibit renin release and the secretion of ADH and aldosterone. They also suppress thirst and prevent angiotensin II and norepinephrine from elevating blood pressure. The net result is a reduction in both blood volume and blood pressure, thereby reducing the stretching of the cardiac muscle cells in the heart walls. We discuss two natriuretic peptides, ANP, which is atrial natriuretic peptide, and BNP, which is brain natriuretic peptide, when we consider control of blood pressure, again, in the cardiovascular units. The thymus is located in the mediastinum, generally just deep to the sternum. This gland produces several hormones that are important in developing and maintaining immune defenses. Thymosin is the name originally given to an extract from the thymus that promotes the development and maturation of lymphocytes, which are the white blood cells that are responsible for immunity. The extract actually contains a blend of several complementary hormones. The term thymosins is sometimes used to refer to all thymic hormones. Information about the reproductive hormones of the testes and ovaries is presented in Table 18-7. In males, the interstitial cells of the testes produce known as androgens. Testosterone is the most important androgen. During embryonic development, the production of testosterone affects the development of CNS structures, including hypothalamic nuclei, which will later influence sexual behaviors. Nerve cells in the testes support the differentiation and physical maturation of the sperm. Under FSH stimulation, these cells secrete the hormone inhibin. It inhibits the secretion of FSH at the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland and perhaps suppresses GnRH release at the hypothalamus. In females, steroid hormones called estrogens are produced in the ovaries under FSH and LH stimulation. Estradiol is the main estrogen. Circulating FSH stimulates the secretion of inhibin by ovary cells, and inhibin suppresses FSH release through a feedback mechanism comparable to that in males. At ovulation, follicles in the ovary release an immature gamete, or oocyte. The remaining follicle cells then reorganize into a luteum that releases a mixture of estrogens and progesterone. During pregnancy, the placenta and uterus produce additional hormones that interact with those produced by the ovaries and the pituitary gland to promote normal fetal development and delivery. So recall from 168 that adipose tissue is a type of loose connective tissue. Adipose tissue produces a peptide hormone called leptin, which has several functions. Its best known function is feedback control of appetite. When we eat, adipose tissue absorbs glucose and lipids and synthesizes triglycerides for storage. At the same time, it releases leptin into the bloodstream. Leptin binds to hypothalamic neurons involved with emotion and appetite control. The result is a sense of fullness or satiation and a suppression of appetite. Leptin was first discovered in a strain of obese mice that had a defective leptin gene. When treated with leptin, these overweight mice quickly turned into slim, athletic animals. The initial hope that leptin could be used to treat human obesity was soon dashed, however. Most obese people appear to have defective leptin receptors or leptin pathways in the appetite centers of the CNS. Their circulating leptin levels are already several times higher than those in individuals of normal body weights. Additional leptin would pretty much have no effect on them. Researchers are now trying to investigate the structure of the receptor protein and the biochemistry of that pathway that's triggered by leptin binding, but it's still kind of a ways off. I'm sure most of you know a little bit about diet science and how that works. But leptin must be present for normal levels of GRNH and gonadotropin synthesis to take place. And this explains why, one, thin girls can commonly enter puberty relatively late. Two, an increase in body fat can improve fertility. And three, women stop menstruating when their body fat content becomes very, very low.